Bondrewd, an anime character I can somewhat respect. A man who is always chasing the bag, under any circumstance. Does he make Yujiro Hanma seem like a good father figure? Yes. Yes, he does. Did he try offing a bunch of kids? Yes. Yes, he did. Did he do it for science? No. He did it for himself. On today's episode of Anime Bullshittery, we'll be watching the straight violations this man conducted in Made in Abyss. Cause the word child abuse doesn't even scratch the surface. So once again, I present Bondrewd, the Prince of Death. Now, Riko, Reg, and Nanachi are at the 5th layer of the Abyss, the Sea of Corpses. And for those of you that don't understand the situation, this is the most clapped field trip I've ever seen for a group of kids. I mean, just for us to get to this point, Riko's been stabbed and almost eaten alive during this field trip. And not to mention, but Reg has done all the heavy lifting. My man has truly backpacked her all the way down here. And as for Nanachi, well, we'll get to her in a second. So the three of them end up making it to the fortress and meets this girl named Prushka. And because they know that Bondrewd is here, they're a little sus. I mean, Prushka has the drip of Bulbasaur, so you can't be too careful. But Prushka keeps asking them how y'all even got here, let alone Papa wasn't even expecting visitors. And in my head, I was like, wait a minute. Papa? And the menace himself comes out from the shadows in slow motion. That's cold as fuck. But we end up peeping Nanachi's face, and she looks like me when I drop the soap. And that's because Bondrewd is the one that turned Nanachi into a furry. And by far the most fucked up way possible. Let me tell you. Now, Bondrewd ended up picking up a bunch of kids from the slums in order to take them down to the 5th layer. Which I find ridiculous, because like, haven't your parents taught you stranger danger? You know what? Hold that thought. I just realized ain't nobody got parents. Anyways, so while they're descending, Nanachi ends up making a friend named Mitty, and they're reminiscing about the things they want to do when they go outside. But we fast forward, and it's finally Mitty's turn to go out, and Nanachi ends up getting worried and follows Mitty. But instead of finding Mitty, she ends up eavesdropping on Bondrewd's conversation, and deadass hears this man say that he never thought the children were human. So Nanachi got to stepping and ends up finding Mitty stuck in some weird capsule. And Bondrewd shows up from the back like he fashionably late to the party and throws her ass in there too. But real talk, what is with the lack of resistance? Yo ass saw him and said, take me. Like, what the fuck? Like, he wearing a mask. He can't even see. Throw some hands. Nevertheless, both Nanachi and Mitty got their backs to the wall. And this man Bondrewd said, we finna do an experiment. And decides to send them down to the 6th layer and bring them back up. And on paper, this don't seem all that bad. That's until you realize that the Abyss is cursed. Because ascension from the 6th layer, the capital of the unturned, pretty much means two things. Either A, your ass is grass, or B, a loss of humanity. But Bondrewd decided he was on demon time and took it a step further. Because with the curse of the Abyss also comes a blessing. And decided that Mitty was gonna get the curse and Nanachi was gonna get the blessing. I'm sorry, but blessing my right cheek, her ass turned into the Easter Bunny. I bet she carries eggs in her backpack. Like, how else is she gonna explain the appearance? Either way, they shot down to the 6th layer, and while waiting for their impending doom, they got a glimpse of what happened to the other children. And my dear God, this might be one of the most disrespectful moments I've ever seen. This man Bondrewd mutated and abandoned these children for the 2nd time. Yeah, it's not looking good for Mitty. But she put on a brave face and hit Nanachi with the classic "it's fine" line. And she almost convinced me. I thought plot armor was gonna kick in at any moment. But before I could even let out a "just wait a second," they started moving up. And slowly you could start seeing Nanachi join the other side. But we take a look at Mitty, and she is begging to end her life. I knew at that moment everybody's bottom lip hit the ground. And you would think turning Nanachi into a furry and Mitty into pudding would be the end of it. But nah, this man wasn't even done. Because it turns out that Mitty did get a blessing and became immortal. So this man Bondrewd wanted to put it to the test and started to torture her. And he even decided to show Nanachi his work. Yeah, no, I'm done. We out. So I think you can understand she didn't have the best first impression. But unfortunately, they needed Bondrewd to use his white whistle to get down to the 6th layer. So, yeah, they're stuck with him. But while they're getting sent to their rooms, Bondrewd's already plotting his next piece of bullshit. And while nobody's looking, his minions end up kidnapping Reg. And because he's half robot, they pretty much go on to dissect him. And Reg's getting hit with the whole shebang. I mean, they're stealing urine samples, they're cutting off an arm, and they're putting needles in his belly button. So later on, they rescue Reg and they decide, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't trust Bondrewd, which I thought was already a given, but apparently not. Like, how much XP does this man have to gain in order to realize that he's a menace? Like, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me for the 20th time, what the fuck are we doing? Anyways, so they end up fighting Bondrewd to the death, and they even beat his ass. And Prushka was watching the whole thing. I mean, she's devastated. But it turns out, bro can't die. I mean, he just cloned himself to one of his minions. So the gang decides, aight, you know what? This is too much. And while they're trying to find a way out of the fortress, they end up stumbling upon the processing room. And it sounds like exactly what it is. Cause Nanachi goes on to explain that this is where Bondrewd brought all the children and scraped off their bones and stuffed their organs in these cases in order to receive a blessing. Like, how do you even present that idea? Like, we finna just take all these kids and shove them in a takeout box and hope we get lucky. And you want to tell me that the rest of the committee agreed to this? All in favor of gambling a bunch of kids' lives away, say aye. Aye. Well, shit. Let's go jump some kids. But nevertheless, we get on to the final showdown, and Reg is hitting Bondrewd with the Gurren Lagann special. Bro said let it rip and proceeds to hit his ass like Pegasus. But as they're fighting, we start to notice that Bondrewd is transforming, hence meaning that he's receiving the blessing from the kids that he put in the takeout boxes. But this is when things get darker than they already are, because there's one minor detail that I forgot to mention. In order to receive a blessing, there's a component that you need. Love. Because when we saw Mitty and Nanachi rise from the 6th layer, Nanachi felt love for Mitty. But in order for Bondrewd to receive a blessing, he needs to feel love for his children. And there was one child that Bondrewd truly loved. And that child would be none other than Prushka. Man, if you don't get the fuck off my screen! And even after all this, it's not like there's a happy ending. Prushka just turns into a white whistle. So now they can go down to the 6th layer. Hooray! Yeah, that's so great. Woo! Honestly, I don't know how to react to this no more. If you enjoyed the video, 5K likes for part 2. 10 if you're really feeling it. And check me out on Fresh Cuts, where I'm still posting shorts over there. But yeah, I need to go cry. So see you on the next one.